All right, YouTube. We're at District Cutlery. I'm Ryan Swanson. It's Gregory Blythe.
Hello, I'm here.
Greg's brought this knife. All right, to kind of check out. This is your first one?
Yeah,
this
so
is like
early on in my career, earlier in my career, I was hand sharpening and I put spots.
Yeah, all right, so I can see where he's been grinding here. He's laid it down below the shinogi line. He laid it flat here to try to thin it out. You see there are some spots here, and those are just low spots on the grind on the bevel from the factory. So like, you know, this low spot here is going to be a high spot on the other side. So this knife is a little bit thick. All right, this knife's a little bit thick right here. So you've seen some of my work on some of the Facebook forums, thinning out knives, sort of our specialty here. I think we're going to get to it. Maybe, you know, the goal is to not polish the knife. All right, well, the goal is to polish the knife, but the primary purpose of what we're going to do is thin out the edge geometry. So the first rule of knife, you take out a knife, you want to assess it. What do you do first? All right, well, I'm going to see how thick it is. All right, can I just put an edge on it on my stones or the belt, whatever you're using, or am I going to have to thin the blade down either on stones or on a belt, which is much more efficient if you're good and you watch your heat. You want to assess your blade. You get a knife in. All right, what do? You want to see if it's straight, right? All right, so you want to look at it. You want to see if it's straight. You're going to look down the edge. All right, you look like this. You want to look down the edge. You want to see if the blade is straight. You have the tip toward you, and you're going to look down there. This blade is slightly bent. You want to see if it's bent then you turn it over from the handle to the tip. You're going to see if that's in line. All right. You want to see if it's out of profile. Okay, is it a nice even profile? Does it have a recurve? You want to lay it flat. Look this way. Look this way. Is the blade twisted? You're going to have it toward you like this. Is it twisted in any way? Compound twisted, which is the most difficult to fix. It's a real pain in the butt. So that's the thing. Before you put it on the grinder, you do anything, you want to make sure it's straight, or you're going to have these uneven things. So this blade is actually pretty good. Factory knives in general are going to be pretty straight because they're generally made by machines. This is tilting a little bit over there. It's not enough that we have to work on it, so we can sort of get right to it. All right.
Just so you know.
Yep. All right. So I'm putting on this ceramic belt here. This is an 80 grit from Klingspor. Nice company, super great service, nice reliable belts. When I need them, when I need them, they're here. So what I'm trying to do now is just thin this blade, bring the shinogi line up. Right, each time you sharpen the knife, you have to consider from the shinogi line down is your edge. All right, that is actually your edge, and that consists of two parts: your secondary edge from here down, from the shinogi to the primary bevel, and your primary edge, which is your cutting edge. And what I'm doing now is grinding the secondary edge to thin down this material, bring the shinogi up, thin out the edge geometry, and get a nice performing knife. So, let's get to it. First, you want to turn on your blower and your sucker so you're not inhaling metal dust. Squeeze in there. Proper breathable protection, right? You know what? I don't have my glasses.
What are you?
Safety glasses, which are also my regular glasses. I have an ice bath back here, and that's going to allow me just to keep the blade cool, all right? If anyone's worried that I'm overheating the blade, don't worry about it, right? See, my fingers are actually on here, so I'm going to feel if it gets too hot, all right? So if it does, I'm just going to bath it up. Now you see I've got some beers in here too. Keep these cool too.
There you go.
Now you can see I've done a couple passes, right? Shinogi, And there's the edge. Okay, here's your primary edge, nice and shiny. I'm going to judge my thinness and where I want it by how small this primary edge gets, okay? So I can see the previous sharpener's work now and see where he's been hitting, okay? If you notice the sparks, all right, if you're not getting sparks, it means that you're on this cladding, all right, and you're only getting the cladding. If you start seeing sparks, well, then you're hitting the steel, all right. So the more sparks you see, well, that means your cladding line is more raised up, and the core of the hardened steel is exposed, and that means you're getting to where you want to be, right? Does that make sense? And you can also see I'm focusing on the back here because the edge bevel, the primary edge is very wide here. All right, if you can see that okay. But here it's thin. All right, I don't want to grind up here. It's already thin. I'm just going to focus down here. You don't have to do the whole thing. You want to focus on one part of the knife at a time. Every action that you do should have a purpose. Are you live right now? Or you just said to say what's up? What's up, Scott Gun? I actually need to get some gunny juice for my leather strap. I've sampled a couple of stones for him, which were very impressive. But I'd love to get my hands on some gunny juice to see because everybody's raving about it. And he seems like a really stand-up guy. Now, if you're going to sit on one spot, you're going to generate heat very quickly, okay? So you just you can't sit on it, right? You can focus on one spot, but you can't just sit on it forever, all right? This is not the freshest belt. I should have started fresh, but there's also a downside to fresh belt where the grain isn't always perfect. So the grain of the grit, like the particles, are sometimes high, right? They're not always perfect. You somehow will get this random high spot, and you're gonna end up getting these deep grooves in here, all right? And even up the side of the blade, right? Fit and finish is, I pride myself on my fit and finish. What I want, okay, like, it's nice to have good geometry, and it's nice to have a nice thin blade, but if my customer's going to pay me good money to do it, I want it to look awesome. You know what I mean? No, but it's probably VG10 because that's like what everybody uses for this kind of Damascus. There's a spark test you can see, right? But experienced smith will know if it's blue steel or white steel or stainless or whatever by the darkness or the brightness or even the size of the sparks. Blue Super has different sparks than blue. White and blue have different, right? Okay, so we're slowly getting there. You can see it's nice and consistent. I don't have any scratches up here. That's the name of the game, right? I'm probably going to do 100 passes on this knife. And the goal is to not scratch from here on up, all right? You don't want to scratch this because it looks like crap. So it's like you're trying to raise this up. And maybe I can come up a little bit higher, okay? But you can see your primary bevel, which is polished. Your primary edge is still polished from the previous sharpening. It's kind of where I want it to be from as a finished product. You know, I might lay it down a little bit. To raise the shinogi up, but I can also do that with my next belt, the 120 grit. It won't be as rough. But you see the cladding line too. It might be tough to see, but it's way higher than the other side, okay? And you can see the difference there.
Beautiful, though.
Crisp shinogis. So now I'll generally alternate one side, but I'm just sort of like staying here on one side, and now I can do the other side. Crisp shinogi, I like that. Okay, one of the things that what I'm doing reveals when you kind of expose your primary edge like this, when you really grind away and rough up the secondary edge, is you can judge the work of the previous sharpener, okay? You're able to see where he was and what they were doing, and it almost like it will tell you a story, all right? And you can kind of see like, oh, I can see that like on maybe this right side, he was a little bit lower than he was on the left side, which is happening, and which is exactly what is happening on this knife. And apparently that's true, right? So
I'm gonna get in on your microphone for a second.
yeah.
No, you're fine. So I'm the first guy to sharpen this knife. I was learning how to sharpen on this knife, and yes, this is the knife that I learned how to switch hands. I used to do everything on one hand, so when I switched, I was having trouble getting the angle consistent on the other side. Now,
So you're right-handed, right? You're right-handed.
I'm right-handed.
There you go.
But
Yeah.
I can tell now when I look at my blades that I can see the thickness is the same on each side, but it's definitely been practice.
Yep. So this would have been your left hand, right? And that's what I just said.
I would have had. It's also the second bevel. Remember how like the first one you're really working?
Yeah.
The second one gets the edge really quick, so you don't spend as much time.
Right.
But then but my angle was just, I was like finger, no finger, up, hit. I just couldn't figure it out.
So what happens now for me is that like this would be like what they call like a 70-30 or like an 80-20, right? Which is another topic for another discussion.
Yeah.
But what happens now is that like regrinding it, I have to regrind so much of the right side and not as much of the left side. So now what you have, you're going to have a 70-30 on your secondary edge, okay? And that so the main actual grind is going to be like that and not completely even, but I might be able to work around it by bringing it up here, and if I raise it up here and not focus down here, you might be able to get in with it.
Okay.
You know, I'll take good care of it. All right, we'll see what
Beautiful.
happens. All right, so I've got the knife sort of where I want to be, almost. You don't want to grind all the way down to 0 or close because I still have another rough belt, the 120 grit, to improve my finish, which is still going to remove material. So if you grind to 0, which means like both sides of the knife coming down with no primary edge, you're going to start losing your profile. The knife's going to be too thin and fail, but also you're going to start losing your profile because your edge is going to start creeping in like this. So what I'll do, I'm going to cut in an edge and just like sharpen a primary bevel on there quickly and then get back to the grinder. You can either do it on the grinder, but for the purpose of the video, we can just do it by stones because it's fun. This is 320 grit, Shafton. I'm sort of a Shafton guy. They're hard enough where I go pretty quick on the stones, so a softer stones like some of the other brands, you kind of dig into them. You have to flatten them off in Sharpening. They're hard enough. They always reliable. I worked with the glass for a while, and they're really great, like ridiculous. They cut real quick, and they put a nice edge on there. But they're hard, and they're hard to flatten, right? When you're professional and you're sharpening 100 knives a day or whatever it is, you have to flatten your stones often, so you don't want to it's kind of a pain in the ass.
So tell the audience, would you normally have done that whole knife on just belts, or tell them what you have done on stone, or why?
Sometimes it depends, right? If it's thin, or or if I'm in the mood, or maybe I got too close to the primary edge on the belt, right? Or maybe I slightly overground it, and not overground it, but just did a little bit more than I want. Well, then if I'm going to cut in an edge on a belt, it might be a little bit aggressive. Okay, so you go to the stones and you have a little bit more control, right?
Just remember, when I talk, they don't hear me.
Now, this is probably sharpened at a pretty low angle, so it shouldn't take me too much to get a burr, and there we go, right? This is a 320 grit. So there we go.
So tell the audience that I sharpened too shallow.
He.
Okay, listen.
The knife was sharp as fuck. Okay, probably. I know this is YouTube, but we can swear. All right.
But let's tell the story. I don't know if they can hear me on the microphone. So the story is, in case you guys can hear me or not hear me. The story is, we have a video. We'll put the clip in. He let me sharpen on stones.
A customer's knife. So a customer brought in a couple of knives, Tatafusa and a VG10 blade like this, and I was like, all right, Greg, here we go. Let's see it.
And,
right?
I did it in a timely fashion.
It was very impressive.
And my edge was consistent. From top to bottom was pretty consistent.
Yes.
You thought there was a spot on one. You thought there was a spot.
There was a little spot on one. If you were my employee,
yep,
I would have said two things. A, keep your edge a little bit more consistent, right? There's a little bit of wobble going on. Okay. A little bit.
Did you think it would be on my left hand? Do you remember which side it was on?
I think right when you started. So you started at the tip and it looked good, and then you got down to the heel, and it was a little bit of a
figuring out the angle there.
A little bit. Okay. A little bit.
So you thought that I might have had a mark a little high. It wasn't maybe the center of the blade, or you think there was a mark that went astray?
Yes, and then when we're saying high, he doesn't mean he doesn't mean high angle. The lower you get, the higher your bevel, the higher your primary edge bevel will be on the side of the knife, right? So if he were my employee, I would tell him okay, maybe bring your edge up maybe a little bit, which you lose sharpness, but you gain longevity on the edge.
More thickness behind the edge, for those of you guys who don't know, more thickness behind the edge is going to make your knife last 20 years. There's plenty of guys who make a knife sharper by a thinner edge, and it's very impressive. That was not my goal. I do not do commercial sharpening. He does. So if he was my boss, and people out there who don't know I'm going to just sit this down. People out there who don't know how to take criticism. It's okay that I might have been wrong. Okay? My feelings aren't hurt.
And it wasn't wrong, right?
But the thing of it is a person who does this literally all day. I do hair for a living, and I have a channel. I can make knives extremely sharp. This is his life, and it has been your life for how long?
Almost 9 years now.
Okay, and you show up at work at what time?
Oh, I show up late, 11.
Okay.
Today I showed up at 10. But
okay. But we're going to be showing you guys footage of this place.
What time is it now? It's 7 now.
So for me, as a knife channel, and I happen to have knives in my home, it's just knife stuff everywhere. So he does this all day. He has a quality control he has to put out. And so for those of you who don't know, you definitely have to answer to the people. And like hairdressers, your rep is what brings them back. And so I made the knife sharp. It was impressively sharp.
It was impressive. It is impressive. And the customer was actually standing behind him, and he was like, oh yeah, right? I was cool, right?
My boss, he was thinking beyond the sharp, that he wants that guy's knife to last longer, and that maybe I was a little shallow on my angle. So I'm looking forward to going home and trying to get equally sharp at a slightly higher angle.
But the thing is, the next time my customer brings the knife in, it doesn't take much to just okay, bring the edge back a little bit. All right, so it's just that's the thing. You want really sharp, but you also want the customer to you want it to last, right? There's a certain, when you do this as a business, you want a value, right? You want super high performance, but you want it to last, right? You want them to get home and be like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. But you want them to do that for multiple days, or knives go dull pretty quickly. You know what I mean?
People are going to start chopping shit in their garage.
Right, they're going to go like this, and it doesn't take. It takes one scrape across your board to dull up your knife. So that's all the thing. But it's just, as a practice, everything is a balance, right? The sharper the knife is, the less
edge retention.
Correct. Right, and the wider the angle, yes, it'll stay sharp, but it's not even that sharp out of the box. So where I am, I try to get in between, but I'm open for criticism too, man. I'm always learning. You know what I mean?
I came to Washington, D.C. because I'm impressed by this man's work. That's why we're here. I'm here to learn. You're on this channel to learn. So my man's going to keep teaching. You can't hear me when I step away from the mic, so I wanted to jump in. So he's going to keep teaching you as he progresses from the 320. He's now on the 1,000.
No, okay. So I cut my primary edge in on the 320. Now I'm going to go back to the belt grinder, and okay. So I'm looking to see I'm going to judge thickness. Okay, is it this is where experience comes in. This is just I've held 100,000 knives in my hand. That's a real number, right? At least I've held 100,000 knives in my hand and done this a bunch of times, and just you sort of gauge how thin is too thin, how what is appropriate. All right. So now we're talking the secondary edge. Okay, this is edge geometry. This is the thinness of the secondary edge is really going to determine the overall performance, right? You could put a higher angle on your primary edge, but if your secondary edge is thick, it's not going to matter too much. You want nice and thin behind the edge. So I can probably do a couple more passes on my 80 grit, and then I'm going to go to 120, take a little bit more down, and the rest is fit and finish, and we're polishing. So we can do that real quick. Thirsty here. All right, what's happening here? I'm finding myself having to grind more on the right side than the left side. What that's going to do is you're going to see the cladding line on the right side be higher than on the left side. So when you see the finished product, and you're like, oh, why is that uneven? It's because of the previous sharpening, right? Nothing is perfect. You can't go and just try to you can't try to go and just make things perfect because of that, or overgrind or remove steel unnecessarily for cosmetic reasons, unless it's a mistake, right? This isn't really a mistake. The knife is structurally sound. The cladding line on the lower side will actually protect it a little better. So if it is damaged, having the cladding line lower, your chip is only going to be up to that lower cladding line. So it's actually beneficial in some way. You have a super high cladding line, you drop it, well, that chip is going to go all the way up into that cladding. It should be fine for the next belt. Sorry? Yeah, I was saying that, what makes a good knife, okay? Its ability to take a fine edge, its ability to hold its edge, and its ability to be resharpened. That's a common philosophy that many smiths share, knife guys share, and that's one of mine. So, and what is that? Well, it's your heat treat and your edge geometry. What exists behind this edge? The primary cutting edge, when you're sharpening it, that's easy. All right, that's like everyone should be focused on that. It's what's behind the edge. If it's too thick, your knife might be sharp for a day, but it's not going to last. So you've got to keep it thin behind there. So what I personally look for in a knife, I've got $100 hand forged blue or white steel blades in my shop. And if they've got great edge geometry, and I'm sure the heat treat is pretty good, they sharpen up and take a nice edge. And I'll take those knives over so many knives out there just because, it's got those three characteristics, right? Not the balance or any of these other weird things. The look is fine, but how well does it cut, right? It has one job: cut your food and be resharpened. And that's a simple approach, but if you think about the time that and the essence of the heat treat and the soul of the smith going into it, that's what all the marbles are. If people talk about the smith, it's their heat treat. Okay, Oh, heat treat. So it's for all the marbles. What makes the smith? So the smith will get the steel from the factory. All right. It'll either be pre-laminated or they can forge weld and laminate their blade. And they'll do it in certain temperature increments, depending on the steel. All right. And then they'll go through. They'll take it to a certain temperature. They'll work it. They'll forge it out. Some guys will forge it to shape. Generally, they'll forge it out, cut out the blade to where they like it, to where they like their profile. Then the heat treat, all right? So they're going to anneal it, which is put it in a softened state. That's a certain temperature below critical. Now, I'm a novice. I'm not a smith, so things might seem a little bit whack, but this is the 101 version of heat treat, right? They're going to anneal it, which is put it in a softened state so they can work it, which means they can straighten it. If they have if they've got a Western style handle, they're going to drill their holes. They're going to cut their profile. The steel is annealed. It's soft. All right. Then they're going to harden it. They're going to quench it. They're going to heat it up to critical temperature, upwards to like 1700, 1900. Right. I do AEBL at like 1975. Like ridiculous. Right. It's like super fucking hot. And then depending on the steel, they're going to quench it. So they'll heat it up real quick. Quench it in oil is most common. Water for some of the Hitachi steels. I know a lot of the smiths in Japan are still using lead. They'll quench in lead, molten lead. Yeah, it's weird, right? Stainless blades, they're going to quench in between two aluminum plates. All right, that's how I do my AEBL. Even VG10, stick it in two aluminum plates, squeeze it in a vise. It's a heat sink, draws the heat out. Now your steel is over hardened. All right, it's not any good. So what you're going to do, you're going to lower the temperature. You're going to lower the hardness by tempering, heating it up to like 400 degrees. It depends. There's formulas for every steel out there. A lot of smiths will do it right in their forge. They'll just put it in their forge real quick, heat it up, boom. Now their steel is tempered. It's good to go. Okay. Some guys, a lot of the home guys, they're going to put it in their oven in their kitchen, let it sit at 300 for an hour, and that should be fine. So you're basically annealing. Quenching, annealing, which is softening, quenching, which is hardening, and tempering, which is bringing your hardness down to a workable level, which is how it is. And now, grew it on the belt, if you overheat it, you could ruin the temper, which is going to ruin your hardness and bring your hardness down. So that's kind of like what I look for. How's your heat treat? Now, I've seen a lot of guys do it, and there's guys that do it right, there's guys that, but again, like, some steels take a lot of skill, like white steel takes the most skill to do, okay? Like the masters are using white number one, and they're the dudes who are like Fujiwara, Carter, right? Shiraki used to do it. Anyone who's using white number one, they know what they're doing because it takes, the temperature gradient is the window is so small, especially these dudes are doing it by eyesight, right? They don't have thermometers, they're using some sort of Coke or right? It's the color, right? They're like, all right, that's experience. Blue steel is the same, but the rule goes like if you there's a larger window, a margin for error, right? That's why you see like white steel knives might be over brittle, or they're very chippy. That's the nature of it. But if you get that perfect temper, right, you get it to a point where it's going to take a ridiculous edge, not be over brittle, and still have a good edge retention. So this is a big rabbit hole. I'm barely a smith. I forged a few knives in my day. But like that's the gist of it, of when people talk like, hey, who's the best knife maker? Who's got the best heat treatment? That's what it is. Who's got the best heat treatment? All right, so I'm back to this knife. I'm trying to regrind it. It's where I want to be. I'm just going to move on to like my 120 grit.
So the bill for this knife,
It'll start at $30, which in my opinion, like it's a very, very good deal for what you're getting. You're basically getting a brand new knife for $30, right? But you want to have a good value for the customer, right? Like I don't want to get all their money all at once. I want them to come back, right? It's a good value. It's a trade-off, right? But sometimes the knives are so banged up and so chipped, it's like it's going to take me time. You have to charge accordingly. You have to have confidence to know what you're doing, right? All right, so I just finished up with my 45 micron Trizac for finishing. And you can see a nice polished look here, crisp shinogi lines on both sides.
I'm moving in just a little bit closer right now. Yeah, it's just sick.
All right, so it looks pretty good. I could buff this out depending on the finish what we want. But what we'll do for fun is we'll put some ferric chloride on it and let the Damascus pop. So I've got a little batch right here. This will probably give me cancer someday. Hopefully that doesn't happen. You know what? Okay, so I previously for Greg I let a shun previously, which I'm sure you'll see that. Let that sit in the bath, but because I can't polish out this Tsushima finish in here, I'm just gonna rub this and give this a bath and wipe this down, and that should let them pop. Should make it pop. So I don't know if you can see this nice.
Maybe tell them on your microphone if that's not going to hurt your hand or if it's
Right. Yeah. It's fine. I mean, it's not.
They don't hear me when I repeat what I say to the customer.
Okay. So this doesn't. It's not like burning me or anything. I don't clean it off. This is. You can get this stuff at Radio Shack if they're still in business. Apparently it was.
Right out like nothing.
Yep. It doesn't take much. So you try to get both sides so you're not soaking one more than the other, and you've got a nice even finish here. I always like this part. It's always cool. It always looks nice, right? It just gives me nice satisfaction that I'm doing this cool shit. This weird line there for some reason.
I mean, you made the knife better than the company did. Tell them what I said on the microphone.
Oh, Greg just complimented me and said it was better than factory production. Now, all right, so this is the left side, which again, you can see the cladding line is closer to the edge than on the right side. You can see it's slightly raised up right there, okay?
So talk about this side. You think this side?
All right, the right side, because I had to grind that more, the cladding line is a little bit higher because your cladding is softer, so it's going to come away and grind away faster than your steel core.
That is just absolutely gorgeous on camera, I can tell you. I feel like I don't even want to put a fingerprint on the damn thing.
So what we'll do, we're just going to wipe that down. This ferric chloride is still on there, so it's still working, right? If I let this sit in here, I let this sit in the bath, it will corrode. They're sort of like corroding this stuff, and you're getting a contrast between the nickel and the steel. So what we'll do, we'll see. I just generally like give it a bath. Then some Windex. The urban legend that Windex will stop the chemical reaction, which is probably BS, but
Story, right?
hey, you know, it cures everything. It's a great movie. So wipe that down. So remember, I had previously cut in the edge with a 320 grit, so all we have to do now is just sharpen the blade up, and it's looking pretty good. Nice and thin. All right, this is sort of like back to original factory edge geometry. So if we want to talk about the belts, right, I started with an 80 ceramic, all right, nice and fresh. My 120 grits you can mess around with. I've got aluminum oxide, which I used for this. Green ceramic. This is the red ceramic from Klingspor. This just happened to be the freshest belt, which is fine. The aluminum oxide, they're cheaper belts, so for finishing work, they're nice because you can go through them when you're grinding the sides, and you don't worry about them like, all right, they might last as long, but they're only like $3.50 a piece, so it's fine. And I can still cut primary edges into this, right? But I might not do any grinding with this for finish work. The key is fit and finish. You don't want to have scratch, right? If you use a fresh 80 group, if you use a fresh 80 grit, all right, you use a fresh 80 grit, you're going to have some deep scratches here. And then if you use like a weak worn 120 grit, you're never going to get those scratches out, all right? And then you're going to go through the whole gamut of 240. I got 45 micron, 30 micron Trizac. You're going to go through all of those, and when you're finished, you're going to have those deep gouges from your 80 grit, and then it looks going to look like crap. So you gotta make sure, just use your fresh belts, okay? You don't worry about it. So again, so this one I did 120 AO aluminum oxide, 240 silicon carbide, which fresh, it'll put the best finish on there in my opinion. It's a nice even grind. They don't last very long, trust me on that. But man, if you want like a finish to pop, silicon carbide is the way to go. Then I went to 45 micron, 30 micron Trizac, and then a little ferric chloride to let the Damascus pop. Now, we didn't buff this at all, right? This wasn't buffed, this wasn't polished, this isn't even polished. This is just from the grits and consistent scratch patterns. If you're gonna be on the grinder, if you're gonna scratch your pattern here, well, you don't wanna have it here sometimes and here sometimes. You'll hear guys talk about, well, you do it with this one way and then do it this one way. But then you have to worry about having it, like, okay, if I had it, like if it was like 10 degrees this way this time, you have to do that every time. It's better just like take the spine of your knife and make sure that's level, and that's how you're judging. That's where you're going, all right? Maybe on the wheel they have it this way, but you're going to have uneven scratches. I do it nice straight down. That's how you want to have it. So I think now we just have to sharpen this knife up on stones. We can go through that, and then should be good to go. It's looking pretty nice. It actually is looking pretty fucking nice, right?
Yes, this is its own video.
I cut in the edge earlier with 320. I'm just gonna just finish it off with 1,000 grit, 4,000 grit. This is Sharpening Pro 1,000. Nice hard stone. Again, you see me, I'm not doing the whole blade all at once. I'm moving my fingers up, doing section. Trying to use the whole stone so you're not creating any gullies or canyons that's gonna mess you up later. Checking for a quick burr. This is probably like an over sharpening, to be honest. The key to sharpening is not what angle you're doing, it's the consistency of the angle, okay? This is my most common question. What angle are you sharpening at? It's like, bro, it doesn't matter, like 12, 14, 15, yes, it does matter because like performance-wise, but like most of the new people at home, they're not gonna be able to maintain that. And even if I tell you, Mr. New Sharpener person, 12 degrees, well, what is that? Are you gonna like bring out your phone or like some angle guide that you can maybe like guess that and then have that on your knife while you're moving it back and forth? It's just like just do a couple of strokes. Okay, I want this to be my angle. All right, make a decision, right? Like what's the angle? This is the angle. I'm not gonna give you a number, it's just like, it's this, right? And try to mimic that. And the goal is just maintain your angle. It's all about, don't be all wobbly or willy-nilly. You gotta like make sure this, basically, your hand is a jig. I'm gonna like adjust it like this, and you gotta lock it in. All right. So I probably like have already sharpened this enough on this stone.
Now what are we on?
This is 4,000 Tojiro 4,000. This is my go-to finishing stone when I'm on stones for my primary edges. It's not overly soft. It just puts a nice kind of like toothy, nice polished edge on there. These are hard to get. I have them if people need them. Now, word of caution. This is, where is my burr? I've got a very large burr on this side of the knife here. If you have a big burr and you're going to go into a softer stone and go ahead, your burr is going to cut into the stone and slide down and open up your fingers. You're going to have your fingers here. And you're not paying attention. You're going to come in. You're going to cut your fingers. Trust me. Always the middle finger too. You know, it's the middle. It's your longest finger, right? It's where all the cuts are, right? So just be careful. Maybe just do a couple strokes upward to get rid of it, all right? And then get to it. You can't really overgrind if you're on a finer stone. The only thing you can do, the more strokes you do, the more room for error, and the more that you're going to be wobbly, gobbly, whatever. You can hear this sometimes, you know that?
Say something about when you clean your stones or rusty racers or don't use them or garage, you know, anything
Yeah, okay, so Nagura stones and cleaning your stones, I don't really mess with them. They're good to draw up a slurry if you're going to do Kasumi finishes. Now, okay, this is just my opinion, right? There's a million other opinions out there. I don't really mess with it. It doesn't seem to do much for your primary cutting edge. If you want to draw a slurry, all right, and work your secondary edge, if you're doing it by hand for an ironclad blade or whatever, that's great for that. But if I want to clean my stone, I just bring out my diamond plate and clean it and dress it, and there you go. Which you should do, right? You should try to do that often. But that's why you try to work your stone and not just sit in one area, all right? You try to work the whole thing. Okay, so I saw Greg do this today, and he impressed me very much. I generally just will strop it, but he did a few strokes going into the edge, and I really like the results of that. And I'm going to say that I learned something today. I've seen other people do that, but it's just, I'm in a routine, right? I'm kind of stubborn sometimes. I'm set in my ways, but what's great about this and what's great about Greg and what we're doing here is we're learning, right? Like, he's learning something from me, I'm learning something from him. All right, so we can do a few strokes into it. Now, again, it's better to be too low than too high. Again,
I agree.
Maintaining your angle, whichever it is.
Just tell them to. Edge leading too high leads to a cut stone.
Yeah, you're going to dig into your stone, right? We have a large collection of dish towels here because all my customers bring their knives and dish towels and forget to take their dish towels. So, free dish towels. Greg's going to test me on the paper towel test. I'm probably going to fail.
Have you ever done the paper towel test?
Yeah. I generally do okay. I might have lost my mic, or I'm stepping on it. That's the trade-off of like your like your higher angles, right?
I bet you can do it. The leather stops behind you. Yep.
Okay, a lot of people talk about leather, kangaroo leather or horse leather or whatever. Again, there's a million opinions about everything out there. It's just a nice piece of leather. It's an abrasive.
But you have compound.
I've got some compound. Looking for special blue compound from Alex Lee. It's probably some chromium oxide or some blend or something like that. It's just, again, there's a million different things out there, a million different sharpening compounds. This is what I just happen to like. I'm not like, I like this. I think it's the best that I've seen for machines, especially if I could polish this on a belt and polish my edge on a belt grinder, on a felt belt or leather with this, and it's just like, oh my God, it's ridiculous. So I can just kind of rub this on a little bit. This is a nice piece of ironwood. And I'm just going to strop this, okay? Nice low angle. Again, it's better to be too low of an angle, okay? If you're not hitting the edge, so what? But if you're too high, you just ruined all that work you did, okay? There you go. Now he's got this paper towel test, right? I will generally, all right. I think the 3-finger test of sharpness is how I like to do it. Okay. So, judging my knives, it's easy to cut paper or shave some hairs. Paper towel or whatever, it's hard, right? Tissue paper, it's hard, right?
It is.
So, I'm sharpening a lot of knives per day, okay? How I do it, I will generally just take my 3 fingers. All right, so the 3-finger test of sharpness. If you're familiar with Maury Carter, he's a big inspiration for me and this knife shop. I can't speak highly enough of him. His knives, his philosophy, his hard work, all of this stuff. But the 3-finger test of sharpness, okay, you're going to take your 3 fingers, make sure your thumb's on the back of the blade, and slowly you're just you're gonna slide them and move them back and forth slightly. Okay, just enough. What that does, it will tell you, okay, maybe this needs a little bit of work. Maybe the tip does, or this is good. It tells you the differences in the blade. And now your skin and your fingers will tell you, like, okay, it's good, right? There's levels of sharpness that you can feel.
Your brain's going to go, danger,
Right.
Will Robinson.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, if it's not, if you can cut the hair in half, not even on your skin,
Yeah, that's tree topping.
then it's generally pretty good. And you want to be able to do that everywhere, right?
It's yes, it's gorgeous. It's that it literally the hair fell off. It just fell off. First off, the knife had dimples from me learning, and it had low spots and high spots. It is thinner, it is cleaner. He brought the Damascus pattern back out. This is not a sharpening. He remade the damn knife, okay?
Another thing too is that, like, if you don't, this is a weird thing, if you got the burr off and you polish it and everything is good, and you want to just sort of like get a little extra leather, you can actually strop it with your thumbs and your fingers just by going like that, right? What is skin? What is leather, right?
Oh yeah. I have confidence that it's paper towel.
I don't know.
Should I do the paper towel at an angle?
I don't know.
Okay, so
It's pretty good.
don't back into the knife accidentally here. This is wet, by the way, a little bit. So
I was worried.
what are you ready?
I don't know.
You know,
It's because I don't do this test, right? Probably a lot of the knives I do are like this. It's just I don't really do this because I generally put my fingers on there and be like, okay, it's good, right?
Right. It's clean. So for you guys, I'm sorry. The company did not make this knife this good. Okay? So buy a $75 knife, then pay $30 extra.
There you go. There you go.
So listen.